She slapped me in front of 100 wedding guests for refusing to hand over my penthouse, but she had no clue a judge was watching it all. I never imagined my sister's wedding would end with her slapping me across the face in front of 100 guests, but here we are. My name's Mia, and my sister, Vanessa, just got married last Saturday. Growing up, we were close, 2 years apart, shared secrets, fought over clothes, the usual. But when she started dating Ryan 3 years ago, something changed. I always had a gut feeling about him, charming in public, but off. Manipulative. Cold. Still, I stayed quiet. I watched as Vanessa gave up her friends, stopped painting, something she loved, and even skipped our annual beach trip. Ryan wanted her focused, he said. She brushed it off, said it was just adult life, but it didn't feel right. When they got engaged, I plastered on a smile. Everyone else seemed happy, and Vanessa, she looked tired, but smiled through it all. The night before the wedding, I found her in the bathroom crying. She said she was just overwhelmed. I offered to help, but she waved me off. I should have said something then. The ceremony itself went off without a hitch. It was held at this massive estate with a garden straight out of a fairy tale, roses blooming everywhere, golden chairs perfectly aligned, a harpist playing in the background. Vanessa wore a satin dress that shimmered with every step she took. She looked breathtaking. But when she reached the altar, I noticed it. The way her hand barely brushed Ryan's, how her smile faltered just a second too long. They exchanged vows, his were polished and grandiose, hers were soft and hesitant. I caught her glancing into the crowd, almost like she was looking for someone to stop her. But no one did. During the reception, Vanessa barely left Ryan's side. He kept a hand on her back constantly, guiding her, correcting her posture when they danced, even choosing what she drank. I watched it all. Quietly. Until the best man made his speech. He was Ryan's college buddy, full of beer and bravado. He started joking about Vanessa being a real challenge to lock down, and how Ryan finally got her under control. He laughed. Ryan laughed. Even some of the guests laughed. I didn't. I looked at Vanessa. Her smile was a mask. Her fingers clenched the napkin in her lap so hard her knuckles turned white. That's when I knew, if I didn't speak, no one ever would. That I didn't plan to speak. I wasn't even supposed to give a toast. But after that speech, after watching my sister shrink into herself while the people who claimed to love her applauded her erasure, I stood up. The microphone was still in the stand. I walked up, heart pounding, ears ringing, and took it. A few people clapped awkwardly, thinking it was some surprise toast. I didn't smile. I wasn't on the schedule, I said, scanning the room. But I need to say something. Not for the photos. Not for the perfect night. For my sister. Some chuckles. Some gasps. Ryan straightened in his seat, arms crossed. Vanessa froze, eyes wide. I continued. Vanessa and I used to talk every day. We'd dream, make plans, laugh until midnight. And then Ryan came along. And slowly, my sister disappeared. A hush fell over the room. One woman near the back put down her wine glass, suddenly very alert. I watched her give up her passions, her friends, her voice, piece by piece. And we all smiled and said nothing. Because weddings are supposed to be perfect. But this isn't perfect. It's terrifying. Ryan stood up then. You're done, he said, loud enough to cut the silence. Sit down, Mia. No, I said, locking eyes with him. Not anymore. I could see the fury building in Ryan's eyes. His jaw tightened, his fists clenched at his sides. But I didn't flinch. This isn't about drama, I said. It's about a woman who's been made to believe she should settle for being controlled. A woman who used to light up every room but now walks like she's apologizing for existing. I turned to Vanessa. You don't owe anyone silence, least of all him. You don't have to smile through it anymore. Ryan stepped forward like he was going to snatch the mic out of my hands, but someone, Vanessa's college friend Emily, stood up and blocked him. Let her speak, she said. Ryan's face turned red. He backed off but didn't sit down. You have no idea what you're talking about, he hissed. You're jealous. Always have been. I didn't even look at him. I looked only at Vanessa. Her eyes were glassy, her lipstick smudged. She stood up slowly and walked across the dance floor toward me. I felt my breath catch. For a moment, I thought she was going to speak. Instead, she raised her hand, and slapped me. A hard, stinging slap that echoed through the reception hall. Gasps. A few people actually screamed. Someone dropped a fork. Vanessa's hand lingered mid-air for half a second before she turned around and walked out without a word. The room was frozen. No music. No murmurs. Just silence and 100 eyes on me, the sister with a red mark blooming across her cheek. Ryan let out a fake chuckle and muttered, well, that was uncalled for, like he was the victim of some awkward toast gone wrong. He tried to lighten the mood, clinking his glass. Let's all just enjoy the night, huh? But people weren't laughing. They were watching him. Watching me. Watching the empty doorway where Vanessa had disappeared. A few guests stood up and quietly left. Some whispered. Some looked at their phones, pretending not to be involved. I stepped down from the little platform, still holding the mic, and walked outside into the cool evening air. My chest was tight, my throat dry, but I didn't regret it. I knew I'd cracked something open. I sat on the edge of a stone fountain at the far end of the courtyard, trying to breathe, when Emily came out and sat beside me. She didn't say anything at first. Just handed me a folded note. She asked me to give this to you, Emily whispered. It was a torn napkin with a smudged pen line across the top. I'm sorry. I panicked. I heard every word. I need time. Please don't stop. It wasn't an apology for the slap. It was something deeper. A cry for help, buried under years of silence that I stared at the note for a long time. Her handwriting was shaky, like her hands were trembling when she wrote it. Emily put a hand on my shoulder. You were the only one who said what we were all thinking, she said softly. Some of us just didn't have the courage. I looked at her. Did you know? She nodded. Not everything. But enough. I saw how he isolated her. She stopped answering my texts months ago. And when she did, it didn't sound like her anymore. The ballroom behind us had gone quiet again. I could hear a new playlist start, something slower, like the DJ was trying to gently erase the awkwardness. Then my mom came out. She looked worried, eyes darting around like she wasn't sure if she should scold me or hug me. She's not with Ryan, she said quietly. She took her bag and asked the driver to take her to a hotel. I stood up. Alone? My mom nodded. She said she needed space. And, she didn't want him to follow. That's when it hit me. The slap, it wasn't denial. It was fear. It was pressure. It was years of swallowing her voice until it choked her. And that night, I became the first person who reminded her she still had one. The next morning, I woke up to dozens of missed calls and texts. Some were from family members telling me I had ruined the wedding. Others were from people I barely knew, guests who had seen what happened and wanted to say they admired what I did. But the message that made me freeze was from Vanessa. Just 2 words, can we talk? I called her immediately. She didn't pick up, but she texted me the name of a small cafe near the beach, the one we used to go to as kids with our dad. I got dressed, grabbed my keys, and drove without stopping. When I got there, she was already sitting in a corner booth, hoodie pulled over her head, no makeup, hair in a messy braid. She looked like herself again, just, weathered. I sat across from her. She didn't speak right away. Just stirred her tea for what felt like forever. Then she whispered, "I thought I hated you." I nodded. "I know. I didn't," she said. "I hated what you made me see." We sat in silence. Then she looked up at me, her eyes rimmed red. "Do you really think I've changed that much?" "I think you forgot who you were," I said gently. "And I think he made you forget on purpose." That's when she started crying. Not quiet tears, deep, shuddering sobs that shook her entire body. And I reached across the table and held her hand. I didn't say anything else. She already knew. We stayed at that cafe for almost 3 hours. She told me everything, things I suspected, and things I never could have guessed. How Ryan tracked her phone. How he proofread every email she sent for work. How he convinced her to cancel plans with friends by making her feel guilty, like her time belonged to him. How, every time she tried to pull away, he'd suddenly become the sweetest man on earth, just long enough to pull her back in. "I thought I was crazy," she said, wiping her nose with a napkin. "Like maybe I was overreacting. He never hit me. He didn't scream. He just rewrote everything until I didn't know which way was up anymore." "That's how it works," I said. "It's not about bruises. It's about control." She looked down at the table. "You were brave." "I wasn't." "No," I said. "You survived. And that's braver than anything I've ever done." She exhaled shakily. "What now?" I shrugged. "Now we find out who you are again. And this time, no one gets to rewrite that story but you." She gave a half smile. It was small, fragile, but real. And I realized, in that moment, the slap didn't break anything between us. It was the first crack in the glass that had kept her trapped. Vanessa didn't go back to the house she shared with Ryan. She stayed in that little hotel by the coast for the next few days. She called a lawyer. She told her boss everything and asked to work remotely for a while. She blocked Ryan's number. It wasn't clean. It wasn't cinematic. There were breakdowns, panic attacks, moments where she nearly gave in. But every time she faltered, she called me. And I answered. Word about the wedding spread faster than either of us expected. Some family members distanced themselves, calling me disrespectful. But others reached out to Vanessa quietly, thanking her for leaving, admitting they had noticed something was wrong but were too afraid to say anything. Even Ryan's sister, whom Vanessa barely knew, sent her a message. "I saw what he did to my mom growing up. I'm so sorry. You're not crazy. You're brave." That meant everything to her. One night, about a week later, Vanessa called me out of the blue. She was sitting on the balcony, wrapped in a blanket, listening to the ocean. "I started painting again," she said. "Just a little. Nothing good." I smiled so hard I nearly cried. "You're already better than you think," I said. And she whispered, "Thanks for not staying silent." A few weeks later, Vanessa officially filed for an annulment. Ryan didn't take it well. He showed up at her hotel once, pounding on the lobby desk, demanding to see her. But security escorted him out, and Vanessa had already filed a no-contact order. That day, she called me, not in tears, not shaken, just calm. "He doesn't scare me anymore," she said. "Not like he used to." It was the first time I heard strength in her voice again. She moved into a small apartment in a quieter part of town, near an art studio. She painted every day, sometimes till midnight. She sent me pictures of unfinished canvases, of her fingers smudged with color, of a cat she rescued from a shelter and named Olive. The sister I knew was coming back, not the exact same, but stronger. Wiser. Real. I visited her one Saturday. The place smelled like lavender and coffee. Her walls were covered in half-finished paintings. One of them stopped me in my tracks. It was a portrait, abstract, bold strokes, fiery red across the eyes. Who's that supposed to be? I asked. She smiled, just a little. Me. The day I slapped you. We both laughed. That moment felt like the end, she said. But now I know, it was the beginning. By the time fall rolled around, Vanessa was unrecognizable, in the best way. Her eyes had life again. She laughed freely, without checking the room. She hosted small art nights at her place with people she trusted. I came to one of them. She was barefoot, paint on her arms, spinning records while guests drank wine out of mismatched mugs. It was messy. It was real. It was her. At one point, someone brought up the wedding, half joking, half curious. Vanessa didn't shrink. She didn't deflect. She said, yeah, that day was awful. But also, necessary. I think sometimes the worst moments break the silence we've been drowning in. Everyone got quiet for a second, letting her words settle. Then she raised her glass. To breaking the silence. I raised mine too. That night, as we sat on her tiny balcony under string lights, she turned to me and said, I don't know how long I would have lasted if you hadn't said something. I probably would have faded away slowly, until I didn't recognize myself at all. You would have found your way, I said. She shook her head. No. You threw the first stone at the glass I couldn't touch. And in that moment, I knew she didn't hate me anymore. She loved me for saving her. Even if it hurt that it's been nearly a year since the wedding. Vanessa didn't just leave Ryan, she rebuilt her entire life. She held her first gallery showing last month. Small, raw, emotional. She called the exhibit The Noise After Silence. I stood in the back, watching strangers stare at her work, eyes wide, hearts moved. One of the final pieces was titled July 15th, 4:42 p.m. A swirl of red, black, and gold. In the corner, the faint outline of two women, one standing, one walking away. I knew exactly what it meant. After the show, she pulled me aside. Do you know the only thing I regret? I raised a brow. What? That I slapped the only person brave enough to speak up for me. I smiled. It got the job done. We laughed. Hugged. Held on a little longer than usual. That slap, as awful as it was, became the spark that cracked the shell she was trapped in. It shook the silence. It forced the truth into the light. People say weddings are supposed to be the best day of your life. For Vanessa, maybe it wasn't. But the day after. That was the beginning of everything.